Your Creative Push, episode 88.
You have the same number of hours in a day as J.K. Rowling, Beyonce, Albert Einstein, and whoever else you may admire.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Tess Alley. Tess is the author of The Divinity Bureau and a finance manager for Vacasa Vacation Rentals. She spends most of her days writing and crunching numbers, but when she isn't, she can be found playing Resistance and fulfilling the wanderlust that comes with working for a vacation rental company. Her debut book, The Divinity Bureau, is available now for pre-order. Tess, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. I was wondering if maybe you could tell me what I missed in that intro and give us a peek into your personal life.
Yeah, I think that basically covers it. I spent a lot of time writing and working, crunching numbers.
What do you find that, like, as a finance manager, the difference is then when you come home from work and you have to sit down? That's what the kind of the podcast is all about. So what does that kind of bring to your life?
So it's kind of crazy because when I'm working as a finance manager, you have like a specific destination that you have to get to, and you have like a handful of ways to get there. But when writing, you have like the destination can be completely different, and you have various ways to get there. And sometimes those paths like shift right as you're like in the middle. So it's crazy too, because sometimes like the thing you write at one point of your life could be completely different than if you write it, at another point in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of points in your life, can you take us back to maybe one of the first points in your life where you found yourself being creative, and tell us that story?
Yeah, so I wanted to be a writer for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, my favorite thing to do was to role play and act out stories. I didn't really consider myself a writer until I started reading Harry Potter, and I got really influenced by J.K. Rowling. And when I say influence, I mean I used to write a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction until I learned to start creating my own stories. I actually came up with the idea for the Divinity Bureau while I was studying the effects of overpopulation for school, and it got splattered on a document 4 years later.
That's cool. And, it's funny, like, you say that kind of, like, grimacing almost, like, oh, I used to write fan fiction or whatever. But I think that's, like, one of the cool things about, art and creativity, writing, anything, really. It's, you do kind of have to start out imitating, like, your favorite people, to kind of get your chops. I forget which writer it was, but he used to type up, like, he literally would copy entire novels of his favorite authors to kind of get the feeling for, how it is. So I think that there's nothing to be embarrassed about, and that's something that everybody really should do is find their favorite writers and try to emulate them and get practice, get your chops that way,
Yeah, most definitely. And that way you know what you like, and it's good to just imitate what you like, because chances are someone else is going to like it too.
Absolutely. It's just like acquiring your taste. What are some things that held you back initially from being creative, and maybe still do today?
The thing that held me back the most was the pressure to pay the bills. So growing up, I had a lot of family problems. So I was forced to be financially independent by the time I was 17. So I took my first full-time job at, $8.35 an hour, started going to school full-time. And so I didn't really have a lot of time. But at the time, I considered myself fortunate because, it meant sacrificing sleep, going days without eating nothing but ramen. But I still consider myself lucky to have the opportunity. So I was like so focused on survival that I thought that I had to give up like my lifelong dream. But as I got older and I rose through the ranks through my career, I thought if I could work this hard and succeed in a career, how can I use this energy to pursue my lifelong dream of becoming a writer? And that's when I just started writing, and that's when I started to publish my book, and I'll just skyrocketed from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you can't quite shake it, as it. If you get into a job, which a lot of people do, that they don't necessarily like, or, it's not paying as much, or it's just kind of taking away from all your creative, juices, it's just taking away from that and killing the creative vibe. Eventually it's going to resurface, like kind of like a phoenix, it's like it has to come out at some point. So it's like you can try to hold it off as long as you can, but eventually it's going to have to come out. So
yeah. And I was also thinking about like the Maslow pyramid, and like, survival is at the base.
Mm-hmm.
But like once you get above that point, there's like the needs for relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if you're a creative type, like you actually have a physical need to create. And I think once you get past that baseline, I think that needs kind of surfaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also realize sometimes how little you need to survive too after you've been doing it for a while. Like you said, you can survive off of ramen if you're happy doing what you're doing with your time. It's easier to do. What's your opinion on ramen these days?
I haven't eaten it in like 2 years.
I would eat it so much in college, and I just had it the other day. It was lovely. I loved it. I was expecting to be like, oh, this reminds me of just like living poorly on nothing, but I loved it.
Yeah, there's like some ramen restaurants here in Portland, and my friends keep wanting to take me there. And at first I was kind of like, having some flashbacks.
Yeah.
But I hear it's good.
Yeah, but I don't think I could feel okay with myself paying more than, I don't know, 90 cents for a meal there. So those things that held you back, how were you able to really defeat that? Not having things going exactly the way you wanted it, but how did you, I guess, decide, you know what, this I need to do this. This is part of me, who I am, and I'm going to write this book.
So for me, it was effective time management and just going for every single opportunity that came my way. And I think everything can be considered an opportunity. Like even if it doesn't advance your career right away, or even if it doesn't get you published or get that giant book deal, even if it forces you to take a few steps back, it's still an opportunity to learn and grow. And as when you're creative, those learning experiences are extremely valuable. They're valuable in finance, but they're especially valuable when it comes to your creative pursuits. So I think that a reason why a lot of people reject opportunities or neglect their creative projects is that they think they don't have time. And I get it. A lot of us have day jobs, they have families, they have personal lives. But the thing is though, like if you hypothetically got a giant movie deal to go star in Hollywood for like $1 million, I think you would make time.
Right.
So I think that if you might have to take a few steps backwards, and you might have to do chop chop, a couple steps forward, a couple steps back.
Sure.
But in the end though, it's just so worth it. I personally have a Google Calendar to keep track of like my day job responsibilities, and then I also consider writing to be a job too. And I just set up blocks of time just to, I set up my work hours, and then I give myself some time to come home and relax. And then I set aside a couple hours for writing, and then, include some social obligations and, things for mental health in there too.
Google Calendars has saved my life for sure. I mean, it's not just the convenience of it, or any. I mean, I'm not just pro Google, but any kind of calendar program, anything that it's not just the actual convenience of it and the plugging the numbers in, plugging the times in and scheduling it. It's the mental thing about it, about actually putting in a time for your creativity or your social obligations or whatever. It's just the mental thing there. It's like, okay, this is a task that I have to complete, just like a task for my job that I would have to complete. And it's there, and that it's coming up, and it makes you much more reliable, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that it's great to just know what you're spending your time on. Because some people, if they think I come home from work, I have like these hours of free time, so they think I could just watch TV, or I can, just chill. And not that I'm against chilling, but that's also time that you could be spending working on your creative projects.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's okay to I used to be, I've talked about this on the show a lot, but that used to be my number one thing was TV, like just Netflix binges, and I watched every TV show like ever created, good or bad. It was like, that was my thing. I would just keep up, and it almost felt like a job trying to keep up with all because there is so much good stuff out there. I'm not saying that any of it's crap, but like, you can just find yourself lost in that. And then now I just pick one show basically a season. Now it's Game of Thrones, and I'm like, all right, like that's my thing. I'm gonna watch that every week. A couple weeks ago was Walking Dead. It's just like picking and choosing, and I've found that I don't really miss it that much. Especially when I can look back and see that I've done over 80 podcast episodes now in the past 4 or 5 months. It's like, whoa, like, wow, that was a lot of time that I was watching TV. Like, you know what I mean? You can actually, to have that tangible thing to hold on to, it really, really helps.
Yeah, it's also good to just sometimes people, they don't really know what they spend their time on, or sometimes they like think like, okay, I only need like 2 hours of writing, but then they just do 2 hours, and then they like, I only wrote like, 1 page. So, I think that it's good to like, at least in the beginning, just keep track of where you're spending all your time and how long it takes you to do things. Like for me, like I personally sometimes I'll tell myself I'm only going to spend like, 5 minutes cooking, and then 5 minutes pass and I have no meal in front of me.
Yeah. Where do you find that your time goes whenever it kind of sneaks away like that?
To be honest, social media.
Yep. Me too.
The thing is though, like, I tell myself that I'm using it to grow my following, but then I also think about like, do I really need this? I think about the conversion rates, like is this transferring over to book sales? And so I think about that sometimes, and I'm thinking like, maybe I should reduce my time on social media, and I should, focus my energy. Like I have a deadline coming up on trying to, on getting this book finished. I got that coming up in a couple of weeks. So I think to myself, maybe I should be focusing my energy on getting that book completely edited before I start spending my time on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough though. It's tough to tie yourself down, especially with big projects that seem like are never ending. So I find that finding like short goals and spacing them out in your Google Calendar, it definitely can help. Like being like, all right, today is 5 pages, tomorrow is another 5 pages, and then that adds up, and just kind of condensing it down like that can usually help if you just look one day at a time.
Yeah, and to break everything down into smaller goals, because it was very overwhelming to think, okay, I need to get this book from a draft on my computer, a first draft on my computer, to a finished product, and get it formatted, get a cover, try to get do the marketing and everything. So it was really overwhelming trying to think of in terms of that. And there are times when I would just freeze up and be like, screw it, I'm just going to go on Instagram and see what's on. And but then when I started breaking things down into smaller goals, it actually was really helpful.
Absolutely. And where are you exactly in the process of your book?
So I'm actually on the final draft now. I edited it about 3 times. I did 1 edit. Probably I shouldn't have done this because you're generally supposed to take about some time after you finish your first draft. So I still kind of consider it part of the first draft. But a week after I finished it, I kind of went back and edited again. But I still kind of consider it a first draft almost because it was so so soon after I finished that final page. So then I took about a couple months break, and then I started the second draft, and then I decided I'm gonna self-publish it, and then I was in the middle of the second draft, and now I'm in the process of formatting it, and I have finally got the cover art and everything, and that's coming out June 1st.
June 1st, okay. And where can we find it?
We can find it on Amazon. It's called The Divinity Bureau by Tess Alley. Right now it's available only on Kindle. So you don't really need a Kindle in order to order it, though. You just need to get the Kindle app, and that can be found on Apple, Android devices. I think there's even one out that you can put for your Windows computer. So yeah, it's an ebook. I'm super excited about that.
Well, congratulations! Yeah. I have the app on my computer as well. So I whenever anything comes out on Kindle, I read it on my computer, which is kind of weird, but I don't know. I like sitting in bed and reading it on my laptop, and then it can go on your phone as well. So.
Yeah, and I'm so lazy about going to the bookstore sometimes, so it's nice to just
Well, it's funny. I buy so many books. I love buying books for whatever reason, but then they just kind of sit on my bedstand. I never get the time to read them.
Saves paper too.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just so used to reading stuff on the computer that I don't know. It's just easier for me. I like it that way. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about the book? Tell us exactly what it's about and what you can expect to find in it.
Yeah, so it's a story about, it's a love story, for one. It takes place in the future. So it takes place after immortality has been discovered. So people are able to stop their aging and they have, like, disease has been eradicated and they can basically live forever. But the downside of that is that it's leading to overpopulation. And overpopulation is leading to things like pollution, a fractured economy, a government takeover. So what the government decides to do is kill off a bunch of people every quarter to keep the population number down. So that's
Ooh.
the setting. So the story begins when this guy, he's like this, entry level IT technician. He's kind of a victim of a poor economy because, I think he reflects those struggles that a lot of college students have where they graduate and they're only able to find a job for like minimum wage. So that's the
Hmm.
main character. And then he gets asked, to run this report of people that are going to die that quarter. And at first he's thinking like, yeah, this is my big shot. Like, finally I could do more than just like fixing people's headsets.
Right.
So as he's running the report, though, he sees this 19-year-old girl on the list, and he's thinking to himself, like, people are living to be like 200, 300. Why is this 19-year-old girl on the list? So he goes to her work, checks her out, sees if there's anything, off about her, and then he thinks, she's pretty cute, and asks her out. So he ends up taking her name off the list, but then as the story goes on, he's trying to figure out like why is this 19-year-old girl on the list? And he starts unraveling all this corruption happening within the bureau.
Very cool. Oh, you got me. What's your opinion on it actually happening like that? Do you think that that's where we're going?
I actually think that's a legitimate thing. I just
Yeah.
started writing it while I was taking a biology class, and my biology teacher was just talking about how, like, he was showing us the numbers and how quickly our population grew,
Hmm.
also pointing out a lot of the issues. So I was living in Chicago at the time, and when he first moved to Chicago, it was like a smaller city, not a lot of traffic or anything like that. But then, like, the population just grew enormously, and so now Chicago is just pretty expensive. There's traffic everywhere, and then finding the same thing happening in Portland also. Like we have, I actually live downtown, so we see people like sleeping on the streets because the housing market is just crazy over here.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to take like my personal experiences in living in like fast growing cities and applying that on a bigger scale.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's freaky to think where we're going, and especially with, yeah, we're gonna get robotic limbs, and eventually we'll just be robots, or I don't know what's gonna exactly happen, but it is kind of starting to happen. It's weird to say.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting because like at the core it is a love story, which I think makes it a lot more relatable. It makes it relatable to me because I feel like
Hmm.
the it's I'm witnessing real people trying to navigate this crazy world. But I remember being 19 and having this idea, and at the time, like I was 19, I could barely handle navigating the world I lived in, so it was hard trying to actually write about creating my own world, but also like having it sort of based on like what I was experiencing, but having it be on a bigger scale. And then I finally finished it like 4 years later, and I had a lot more life experience by then, and so it actually, like, the product ended up being a whole lot better, having it be done 4 years later as opposed to back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that a lot of times that happens with ideas that might spurt up, like especially for me with writing. I get ideas years in advance, like years before I actually put them into like kind of completion. The right moment almost has to come up. It's a little bit stressful because I have so many ideas written down,
Hmm.
but then I'll go back and I'll look and I'll be like, oh yeah, like I've had life experience that makes this idea kind of tangible, more tangible to me to actually put into an actual piece or an actual whatever.
Yeah, you also just like start talking to more people during that time because I didn't hang around the same friends at 19 as I hang around now.
Hmm.
For when I moved to from Chicago to Portland, so I got a whole new different perspective and a whole new set of people, and just started talking to them, started getting more like different perspectives and everything, and in the end, the book just ended up being a giant mesh of everything that I learned, and yeah, I'm really proud of it. It was a long time in the making, but I'm so happy. I think I cried a little bit when I first saw it on Amazon.
Good. I mean, yeah, that's what it should be like. It's a huge accomplishment. Like, that's such a cool thing to be able to do. Something that I think, God, like over 90% of people say they want to do is write a book. You know what I mean? So to be able to actually do it, have it there, and tangibly look at like such a big project as a book, especially one that, you know, you've had the idea for many years now.
Yeah.
It's congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, even just writing a mediocre book is still a lot of work. So whenever you see people that like take the time to actually create something pretty good and big, props basically, like it's really time consuming and a lot of hard work, but I think the result is definitely worth it.
What advice would you give to somebody who has an idea like you, maybe that's been kind of stewing in their brains for a few years? You know, they're like, oh, I wanted to create that. And I'm talking about not just writers here, like anybody, you know, any creative kind of person that might be listening right now that has always kind of had an idea, but they're maybe too afraid or too lazy or too whatever to kind of do it. What advice would you give to them?
I think this is going to sound really cliche, but
That's fine.
I say just go for it. They always say that the first step is the most difficult, and I think that's especially true when it comes to like, you know, people with a lot of creativity in them, because you know your creativity is a big part of who you are, and just like having it out in the world is a pretty vulnerable feeling. But at the same time, too, it's kind of like when people, even people non-creative types, have, you know, when they have a lot of feelings, like it's vulnerable. Putting that out in the world, but it's also very rewarding. That's why people are always saying like talk about your feelings and stuff. And I think the same concept is true when it comes to creativity. It's like, you know, put it out there. It's vulnerable. It's hard, easier said than done, but it's definitely worth it. Like I think that the rewards definitely outweigh the fear.
Absolutely. It is when you talk about emotions and stuff like that, it is tough to put yourself out there, especially where you're not sure exactly who's going to be reading it. Like
Mm-hmm.
if it was just writing it for yourself, it's one thing. But when you're like, oh wow, literally anybody who ever wants to see this can see this, it does become scary. But at the same time, once you put yourself out there and you're like, wow, these are these emotions that I thought I was the only one who felt, when somebody can say, wow, I can totally relate to that, it's such a rewarding experience. It's such a rewarding exchange that makes it all worth it, I think.
Yeah, I started writing things like I started writing like inspirational quotes and putting it on my Instagram.
Which I love, by the
Yeah,
way.
oh, thank you.
That's how we connected
Yeah,
with our quotes. I love it.
yeah. So like it was scary at first because at the time I had a lot of feelings. You know,
All the
yeah.
feelings.
I mean, like there was a lot of feelings going on. It was like just fear of like trying to write a book, and then there's also feelings about like I had a lot going on in my personal life at the time, and I was just going through a quarter life crisis. So I had a lot of feelings. I was really scared about that, but then I started putting it on, and I started noticing people commenting, and just and then I would see like people actually like tagging their friends, like you should read this.
Hmm.
This is applicable to your situation.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, someone's like actually like tagging somebody and like having them read my stuff. It actually was it made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Absolutely. That's like the reason that you should be doing it, you know, is to not only create connections with other people yourself, but to allow for a dialogue and discussion and connections to be made between other people. Like, especially because, you know, when people tag somebody else, it's like that's the personal connection that they have
Hmm.
that, you know, you're allowed to now be a part of. You know,
Yeah.
it's really special.
Yeah, and it just feels so good being able to like inspire people. And I think that's one of the nice things. Like that's another reason why I actually have a lot of admiration for J.K. Rowling is like she created not only this amazing story, but like you know she's basically like almost like the mother of this huge fandom that you
Hmm.
know like it's such a bonding experience. Like, oh, you're a Harry Potter fan. I'm a Harry Potter fan. I see that
Hmm.
sweater you're wearing. It's got the scar on it. That's so cool. So like you know that's the thing about creativity is like and stories they bring people together, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And you never know kind of who you connect with until after you've created it. So you got to create it before you can, you know, find that out. You know, who knows what the Divinity Bureau will bring people together.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. All right, Tess, it is time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach to the microphone, grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today that's thinking, maybe I could do this too. Maybe it's time for me to write this novel. Maybe it's time for me to do whatever kind of creative thing is in my mind, to start the cha-cha, if you will, and give them your best words of advice and push them to do it.
All right. So what I would say to this person is that you have the same number of hours in a day as J.K. Rowling, Beyonce, Albert Einstein, and whoever else you may admire. And you're going to find time for your creative pursuits. And I get it. A lot of us have day jobs, they have families, they have personal lives. Finding time for your creative pursuits may involve waking up earlier, or it may involve saying no to social pursuits. But I guarantee you that it's completely worth it.
Absolutely. And I might disagree, though, that Albert Einstein probably had like 25 or 26 hours in his day. I'm sure he figured out a way to tweak that space-time continuum crap.
All right, exclude Albert Einstein.
Bad example. No, but no, I completely agree. And it's when you're at the level of where you haven't quite started and your project or whatever idea that you have, this grand idea you have in your head is such like a arduous big thing. Like, it's like, how could I ever reach the level of one of those people like you mentioned, like Beyonce or J.K. Rowling? Like, how could I ever be? But they're the same exact person. And the thing that I found in this podcast is they all struggle from the same things that hold us back too. Like the same, am I good enough? Is this worth it? Mm-hmm. Why am I doing this? That we do as well. So we're all on the same level playing field. So if they can do it, you can do it too, but you just have to take that first step. Yeah. So I really, really love that advice.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling was a single mother living on welfare, and she had a kid and everything, yet she still managed to create this giant empire.
Yeah, and that's why it's so cool, she wrote it on napkins, I think, mm-hmm. like her ideas and stuff, and just, that is like a first step, just writing those ideas out, getting them out of your brain and just starting to put them on paper and starting to kind of mold them into ideas, and you never know where it will lead you. So yeah. I love it.
And she was told to get a day job also, because they told her that, Harry Potter's not going to do well, get a day job. You can't support yourself on this. And yet here she is.
Yeah. She said, whatever. Mm-hmm. Now she can drop the mic. So, Tess, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And you can find Tess on Facebook or Instagram at Tess Alley. That's TessAlley. And you can also head to our show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Tess Alley to find all the links to all the resources we talked about today, including a link to go buy her book, which I highly recommend you do. I am going to be doing that right now. So, Tess, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I love it so much. Thank you so much, Tess, for coming on the show. Tess brings up such a good point that any master of the craft, whatever it is that you're interested in, the people that you admire, the legends of the thing that you do, all these people have all had the same amount of time in the day as you. They are not superhuman. They are just human. There is something to be said about talent, but there's also something to be said about hard work and just putting in the time. And like Tess said, it's all about putting that first step in. So if you haven't taken that first step, there's no better time than now. Just do it. And you never know what your work will lead to until you actually do the work, until you actually make this thing that's in your head, until you put it out into the world and see how it's received, and then see how that reception changes you as an artist, as a creative person, and see if what you do kind of has wings to fly. But you never know it unless you do take that first step and unless you put the time in and try it out. And don't be scared of failure, and don't be scared of success either. On tomorrow's show, we have Ben Lopez.
I think I booked myself like 8 solo exhibitions in like 1 year. So it was like back to back, just creating as much as I could, trying not to let like creative blocks get in the way, because everyone gets them. That happens, but I don't know, I've got a pretty good way of just pushing through that and just creating more art. But I mean, the exhibition stuff was cool for a while, but then like I ended up just losing heaps of money because no one bought any of my shit. Like some shows would be awesome and they'd sell out, and then the next one sold nothing, and that it sucked.
Ben is a really cool artist, a really cool guy. He does tattoos that are really cool, very psychedelic and almost familiar. I really enjoyed my conversation with him, and it took an unexpected turn right from the beginning. So you'll definitely have to see what that's all about tomorrow. But hopefully today you were inspired to go and get your work done. So please, please go and get it done. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing. I love y'all. And we will catch you tomorrow if you need the push again. Have a great day. Bye.